I wanted to talk a little bit today about a programme that I saw on television this morning when I was eating my cheesy eggs. Cheesy eggs, what's not to love? Eggs and cheese. Anyway, it was about an immigrant family. It was about housing. It's a programme about social housing and housing standards or something like that. I can't remember. And it was this family, and they remained anonymous, and probably best for them, really, once I get into the story why. But the house they were in, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, utterly appalling, this property, provided by the council, and they were complaining about how damp it was, right? So he has no work permit, no permit to work, and gets no benefits from the government. So it doesn't say why. I'm presuming he's either an illegal immigrant, was here on a work visa and it's now run out, that kind of thing, something like that. There's something, he's got no work permit and he was obviously foreign. But they are housed by the government because they have a son who is in school, so they have the council have a legal obligation to find a house for them, but give them no money. So this house was appalling. Never seen anything like it. And that must be reality. That can't be the one-off worst council house ever. This must be quite normal. Awful thing. No central heating, so they were talking about how they were spending £80 a week on electricity keys, burning up these, these fan heaters that you would use for a caravan or something, or maybe occasional bit of heat. I mean, they're really expensive to run and don't really give out any lasting heat whatsoever because the house had no central heating. Where they were getting the money from must be illegal earnings, so it's just as well they kept anonymous, or the immigration team would be like a SWAT team. They'd be in there getting them, sending them home. I wanted to talk about these electricity cards a little bit because it just all came into my head, and I remember as a kid we had them. We had, my mum still does have actually, a meter, an electricity key. I don't know if she's got a gas key, I think she must have. I don't know if you get gas keys, I presume so. Now, they're only poor people. People on low incomes are the only people that have these. I mean, on the surface, it's quite a good way of budgeting. Anyone should be able to get it. It's about how I want to pay my bill as a consumer, as a customer. I would choose to pay in advance. So I would like a little key card and I'll pay up what I use as I use it, pay per use, right? But I suppose but the electricity and gas come at a higher rate because of that, because the gas company actually think they're doing you a favour by installing one of these meters. They're not doing anyone a favour. I'm paying for it. You're not doing me a favour. The way people are treated, the whole kind of the way that customers are treated is wrong in this country. The gas company aren't doing me no favour by giving me gas because I'm paying for it and paying through the nose for it. I should not then be penalised because I want to pay in advance for it. That's my choice. And as a consumer, I should be given it. Customer's always right. However, it's much more expensive. I actually remember as a kid we had like a box behind the TV when I was really young and you had to put money in it. I remember it was 50 pences because it was those huge big 50 pences. When I was a kid, a 50 pence was really big. It was like as big as my hand. And then they brought in the newer modern one, which is quite small. I was also a child, so I had smaller hands. It wasn't like a dinner plate. 150 pence, please. Like a dinner plate. But they were really big. I remember always marvelling at them. But what was that paying? That can't have been electricity because the whole electricity in the whole house would have gone off. It was just the TV it fed. Maybe that was a way of paying up your TV licence, or maybe the TV itself was hire purchase and we didn't own it, and that was a way of paying up your television. So actually, you didn't own the television and you had to pay it up once your time had run out. They switched it off so you can even use it. It's so sort of like, medieval. Anyway, I remember that as a kid and these key cards. And it led me on to thinking a lot. This whole thing has been making me think often about my past, because that's all I can relate it to, when I'm a kid. My mum still uses Provident loans. For those who don't know what a Provident loan is, it's like a sort of, I don't really know, you could call it a loan shark. It's a loan company. When I was a kid, they used to do, I don't know if they still do, they used to do either cash or Provident checks, which were like little, W.H. Smith gift vouchers. They were a check. They had a monetary value. Now, what would make you choose the check over the cash? The check must have come at a lower percentage APR or something, payback. So basically the premise is, if I borrow £100 from Provident, I pay back 150. You pay back half again of what you owe. So 500 becomes 750. You know, it's logical, it's easy enough, and it gets broken down into weekly payments. You know, I think it's like £3 a week per 100 or something like that. I don't know, for 15 years. I don't know. I mean, it's quite small repayments, but it's forever. The checks, because you could only use them in a limited sort of few places, must have come at a lower percentage APR, because why else would you want them? You could just take the cash. Or maybe it was to stop people spending them. Maybe that was why. Maybe it was like a choice, because quite often people on low income, suddenly you get a bit of cash in your pocket, you go and splash it down the pub, you know, or you go and, don't know, use it at the bookies. You can't use checks in the pub or the bookies. They basically are only redeemable against clothing. You couldn't even use them in supermarkets and things like that or anything. Not that we would have gone to a supermarket, we didn't have one close, but you could only go to, like, you know, clothing shops in town, like department stores that took these checks. And it was a terrible stigma. I felt there was a stigma attached to it. I've always been quite a sensitive person. I was very sensitive as a kid. I'm very sensitive to people's reactions to me. I suppose another way of putting it is perceptive. I can always read people really easily, and I can read often. I'm not always right, of course. No one's infallible, but I mean, I kind of I can always tell what people, their opinion or what they think. I'm quite good at that, and I was as a kid. I was very sensitive to changes in atmosphere, certain things like that. And children are naturally, but maybe some people are harder to it. You know, it really affected me. I've always felt very conscious of this stigma of being poor, and there is a stigma. Maybe things have changed now. I kind of doubt it. I think there's a stigma attached to it. You know, you can't afford that. You feel that other people, you're excluded because you can't afford it. Anyway, there was a point to this. There was a point. Oh yeah, this Provident woman. Now this is the thing here. My mum still has Provident checks. We have been, not checks, money. We have loans from them basically. I have been through this with her 1,000,000 times. I've paid them off for her once. Twice probably now. Yeah, twice I think. She still gets them because she actually thinks that the woman that collects the money, the woman that gives her the loan, is her friend. My mum thinks that's her friend. I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, so they prey on sort of vulnerable people, and because Anne's her name, and I don't care if Anne has seen this. In fact, I quite like Anne to see this because I make no bones about the fact I cannot stand Anne. If I'm in my mum's house when Anne comes round, I'll either go into the kitchen until she's done her business and collected her payments and left, or I'll sit and stare at her until she feels so uncomfortable she leaves. But I don't give her the time of day because I have got no respect for that. She is earning money out of poor and vulnerable people. Yeah, she needs to earn a living too. I get it, you know, but I'll go into why I can't stand her so much. So my mum phoned me up and she says, oh, Anne was round today getting the payments because basically Anne stitched up my whole family. Several members of my family, won't name them, have loans, and the payments either come from my mum or from my mum's sister, and so either one or two, and they see each other on a daily basis. They live very close to each other. Anne will go to one house and collect all the payments for that week, right? Which makes sense for Anne. But it means that, you know, they have this kind of like buddy-buddy relationship. Anne will have a cup of tea. Mum was like, oh, Anne came today. She brought me a bag of potatoes. Wasn't that kind? Because they're quite heavy for me. It's like, no, she's not kind. She came to take all your money. I mean, the kind of thing that Anne will do is, here's a little bit of, I'm sure it's not rocket science. You can work this out. If I take a loan, if I were to take a loan out, not with Provident, with a bank loan, I'd be interested in how much I was finally paying back. I'm not just interested in the monthly repayments, although you want them to be affordable. You also want to see how much you're paying back, because of course the less you're paying, the longer you're paying it for, it means the greater amount you pay at the end. It stands to sense, it's just basic maths. My mum, and people like her, and people on small incomes are all about how much they're paying out. They're about getting from day to day, point to point. They're not about for how long they do it. They don't care. It's just, do my outgoings get bigger? You know, so I get £500 for Anne, but my payments to Anne are only the same as they've always been, £10 a week. I can afford £10 a week and I've got £300 in cash. Great. Yeah, but you're paying it for like 20 years. So Anne will basically come along and say, oh, Liz, you've got a couple of little loans here. And that bigger one, I'm just going to round them all up, and there's another £300 in cash, and I'll just lump them all into one bigger loan, and that'll sort it out, and your minimum payment will stay exactly the same every month. And my mum's like, oh, yeah, great. Yeah, but when you look in the actual book, she's then signed my mum up, rather than it being my mum is nearly finished paying, and she'll be done and you know, by the end of that year, she's now signed up for another decade of paying, practically. I mean, it's outrageous, you know, and this is why I cannot stand her, you know, and my mum just doesn't look at the things like that. She is about getting from week to week, even though she doesn't need to these days. Doesn't need to live like that, but she's got herself in that hole, and there's no way. I'm not going to be able to change it. I've tried to. Paying them off, tried to get rid of it. She just always wants it, you know. It's like habitual almost, you know. Anyway, and that's her bag. That's her life. I can't, you know, there's only so much trying to help someone you can do unless they'll help themselves, and she just won't change it. So I'm beyond trying. But there's a little insight into that kind of thing. For me, it's something that angers me, and I've been thinking increasingly during this all about my past and all about that sort of thing, as linked to having no money, you know. And yeah, I would probably take out Provident loan. I mean, I give them to people on benefits. They do. Clearly, I had them when I was a kid. I have them all the way up. You know, my mum's now a pensioner, so she's technically still on benefits, and she still gets them. It's just whether you can make your payments. If you can pay every week, then that is all the criteria they need. They're not bothered in anything else. And they try to make it like a personal thing, and it's like, I'm trusting you to do that. You're not trusting me. You're taking my money. You're providing a service, and you're taking loads of my money, you know? So don't pretend you're my friend, because you're not. Yeah, sorry. It really gets on my nerves, that kind of thing. It really annoys me. How gullible people can be. Don't be gullible. So maybe it's about believing what you want to believe. You know, it's not about being gullible. You actually know the person's not your friend, but you just believe it because you want to believe it, because it just makes things seem better than the reality. You know, you're being used by that person. You know, Anne rocks up in her big 4x4, sort of, you know, a 4-wheel drive Mercedes thing. You know, and there's my mother in her council house, but Anne's her friend. Whatever. Yeah, so anyway, I'm getting to the end of this, but I will admit, yesterday I was this close to jacking the whole thing in, because I was feeling rubbish, and I just thought, I'm just going to put a blog up. I'm going to put up and say, do not give me any more money. I'm done. I'm done with this. It's making me ill. And I can't say for sure it is this diet that's made me ill. It probably isn't. I probably was just getting ill anyway. It's like I've been quite busy, and I've allowed myself downtime, and that is like giving your body permission to just go, you know. But I feel much, much better today and much more positive. It's probably because the end is in sight. And that's something that someone who's living like this day to day doesn't have. They don't have an end in sight. There's no change. It's just the monotony of it. And you're just expected to accept it. And maybe if you've known nothing else, or you've had this for years and years and years, it becomes more bearable. But for me, because it's such a stark difference to my normal life, it actually is. I'm counting down the hours, practically. However, I've raised a decent sum of money so far, and I'll probably raise more. I'm sure I'll hit my target by the end of the week through people's generosity. I'm probably going to give some myself, to be honest, even though I've given of my body. Given of my body makes me sound like a prostitute, hardly. I don't think we'd be earning much there. But I've probably donated some money myself. The money that I've saved on my shopping, I think I will guesstimate how much that is, and I'll give that at the end, because I would have spent it anyway. Yeah, so the rant over for today. It's not so much about the food, it's just about thinking about how things affect people. Yeah, it's been really interesting for me. This is what I wanted it to do. It's made me think a lot more about my past and actually accept. I don't try and tart up the past. The past was what it was. You know, it was pretty hard at times. Yeah, and it's been good for me to actually revisit that and not pretend. There has been times in the past where I pretended my past was a lot nicer than it was, because I was maybe embarrassed, or I felt like telling the truth